There's a three-letter word that can collapse everything you believe, everything you've built your life around, every value you hold, every rule you follow, every reason you get out of bed in the morning. One word, three letters, why? Try it right now. Pick the belief you hold most sacred, the one that feels most solid, most unshakable, the one you'd argue for at a dinner table. Now ask why you believe it, then ask why again and again. Keep going, I'll wait. At some point, the answers run out. The ground beneath the belief gives way, and you're left standing over a void you didn't know was there. This is the moment that breaks some people and awakens others. You've been here before, haven't you? That feeling of suddenly questioning everything, not just your opinions, but your foundations, your purpose, your reason for being here at all. It usually hits in transition. When you're growing out of the beliefs you inherited, when the world stops making the sense it used to, when you realize that most of what you accepted as truth was handed to you by people who were also just guessing, and then comes the thought that changes everything. What if none of this matters? What if the meaning you've been searching for doesn't exist? What if the universe isn't a puzzle with a hidden answer, but a void with no question at all? Most people feel this at some point. They brush it off, call it a phase, retreat back into the comfortable stories they were given as children. But some people sit with it, some people let the question breathe. Some people are brave enough or broken enough to follow it all the way down. And what they find at the bottom is something that has terrified philosophers for centuries. Nothing. This is nihilism, the ideology of nothing. The belief that life has no inherent meaning, no objective purpose, no built-in significance. That everything we call good or evil, right or wrong, important or trivial, is something we invented. A collective story told by temporary creatures on a pale blue dot spinning through an indifferent universe. Nietzsche said it most bluntly. Every belief, every considering something true is necessarily false, because there is simply no true world. No true world, let that land. Not a difficult world, not an unfair world. A world where the very concept of truth is a human construction, where the ground you're standing on was always imaginary, and now you have a choice. You can look away, or you can look closer. But before you spiral, let's get something clear. Nihilism is not the same as depression. It's not the same as giving up, and it's absolutely not the same as not caring. Most people confuse nihilism with pessimism. They're not the same thing. The pessimist believes in a world where bad things win. They see the glass as half empty. They believe evil overcomes good. They're still playing the game, just betting on the losing team. The nihilist doesn't play the game at all. The nihilist throws the glass away. Because whether it's half full or half empty is irrelevant when the concept of the glass itself is a fiction. This is the distinction most people miss. And it matters enormously. Because nihilism isn't about believing the world is terrible. It's about believing the world simply is. Without judgment, without cosmic narrative, without a scoreboard. Think about every moral certainty you've ever held, everything you've called objectively wrong, every line you've drawn in the sand and said this far, no further. Now ask why that line exists. Not culturally, not socially, cosmically. In the grand architecture of the universe, why does that line matter? And you'll find yourself in the same place that commenter found themselves on Reddit when someone asked, "Why do you believe a human life is worth more than an animal's?" No one could answer. They tried, they came close, but the why, the real why, the cosmic why, remained unanswered. And this is the abyss that nihilism opens beneath your feet. If nothing is objectively meaningful, then how do we justify anything? How do we call certain things atrocities and others achievements? How do we build a civilization on values that have no foundation beneath them? Nietzsche saw this coming, and he was terrified. Not because nihilism was wrong, but because he believed it was right and he understood what that meant for humanity. He famously declared, "God is dead," not as celebration, as warning. He wasn't talking about a deity. He was talking about the collapse of the shared belief system that gave Western civilization its moral structure, the invisible architecture of meaning that held society together. And once that structure collapses, he warned, what comes next isn't freedom, it's chaos. Because if nothing means anything, then everything becomes permissible. And a world where everything is permissible isn't a world of freedom, it's a world of horror. Look around you right now, at the fractured landscape of modern life, at the collapsing of shared values, at people defending the indefensible because who's to say what's right? Nietzsche saw this, and he had one more thing to say about it. Here's where it gets interesting. Here's where Nietzsche does something extraordinary. He doesn't stop at the void. He doesn't leave you there staring into the nothing, paralyzed by meaninglessness. He asks, What if the void is the beginning, not the end? Because Nietzsche argued both for and against nihilism simultaneously. He used it as a scalpel. He let it cut away every comfortable illusion, every inherited belief, every borrowed meaning. And then, in the ruins of everything that had been destroyed, he asked, "Now what do you build?" Because tearing down an old house doesn't make you homeless. It gives you the chance to build something better, something yours, something chosen instead of inherited. This is the move that most people never make. They stop at the destruction. They feel the meaninglessness, and they either run from it or drown in it. But the rare ones, the ones who sit in the ruins long enough, they start to understand something profound. If meaning isn't given, it can be created. If purpose isn't built into the universe, it can be built by you. If there's no cosmic scorecard, then you get to decide what matters. This isn't nihilism anymore. This is what comes after nihilism. The clearing that exists when you've burned away every false certainty and stand in the open air for the first time. And in that clearing, something becomes possible that was never possible before. Radical freedom. Not the shallow freedom of doing whatever you want. The deep freedom of choosing who you are, what you value, what you build your life around. Not because a tradition told you to, not because a religion promised reward, not because society expects it, but because you decided, consciously, freely, with full awareness that no cosmic authority is watching or judging. Nietzsche called this self-overcoming, the constant creation of your own values, the refusal to inherit a life, the insistence on authoring it. But here's the weight that comes with this freedom. If you create your own meaning, you're fully responsible for it. There's no one to blame when your story doesn't make sense. No cosmic plan to point to when things fall apart. No inherited script to follow when you don't know what comes next. You have to sit with the void. You have to stare into the nothing. And then, in full knowledge of the nothing, choose something anyway. Shakespeare understood this darkness when he wrote that life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. But here's what Shakespeare didn't finish. Just because the tale signifies nothing doesn't mean you can't tell it beautifully. Just because the fury means nothing cosmically doesn't mean it can't mean everything personally. The nothing is real, and your response to it is also real. Both can be true simultaneously. So here you are, standing in the clearing. Standing in the clearing that the question why created. The old beliefs are gone. The borrowed meanings have dissolved. The comfortable stories have been stripped away. And you have a choice that nobody can make for you. You can let the nothing consume you. You can let the meaninglessness become an excuse, a reason to care about nothing, to build nothing, to risk nothing, to feel nothing. Or you can do something far more difficult and far more powerful. You can choose your meaning anyway, knowing it's constructed, knowing it's temporary, knowing the universe won't validate it. Because here's what the nihilists get wrong, and what Nietzsche ultimately understood. The fact that meaning isn't cosmic doesn't make it less real. The love you feel for someone isn't less powerful because it evolved from chemistry. The beauty of a piece of music isn't less transcendent because it's just vibrating air molecules. The satisfaction of creating something isn't less profound because the universe doesn't care. Your experience of meaning is real, even if meaning itself is not built into the fabric of existence. And that's enough. That has to be enough. Because it's all there is. Think about the people in your life who seem most alive, not the ones who have the most certainty, not the ones with the clearest answers, but the ones who have somehow made peace with the questions. The ones who carry the uncertainty without being crushed by it. The ones who laugh at the chaos instead of being paralyzed by it. They've been to the void, and they came back, not with answers, but with a different relationship to the questions. This is what awaits on the other side of nihilism. Not comfortable certainty, not easy answers, but something more valuable, the freedom to build a life that is genuinely yours. Not the life your parents designed, not the life your culture prescribed, not the life your fears allowed. Your life, chosen deliberately, built consciously, lived fully in complete awareness of its impermanence and its constructed meaning. And in the next step, you're going to understand the specific philosophical frameworks that come after nihilism. The ideas that have helped people not just survive the void, but use it as the foundation for something extraordinary. But before that, I want you to sit with something. Think about the belief you hold most tightly. The one that gives your life the most structure. The one you've never really questioned. Now ask why all the way down until you reach the nothing. And then share in the comments. What did you find there? Was it terrifying? Was it liberating? Was it both? Because here's the truth about the void that nobody tells you. You're not alone in it. Every conscious being who has ever lived has stood at the same edge, has felt the same ground give way, has stared into the same darkness. And most of them found that the darkness wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the real one. You asked why, and everything collapsed. Good. Now you can build something that will actually hold. Not because the universe requires it, not because tradition demands it, not because anyone is watching, but because you, in full awareness of the nothing, chose to create something instead. And that choice, that utterly human, utterly fragile, utterly magnificent choice, that's not nothing, that's everything.